a new product is culmination of that service or result, which is part of your definition of for a project that satisfy customers' needs, streamlining processes, driving efficiencies, or helping an organization grow their revenue. Whatever that is the value. And that is a key concept in project management. And we touched on it a while back, but I just want to bring it back. The other concept, which I may not have discussed specifically, but I want to put it on here, and that is to define a system. What is a system? So system is equal to projects plus programs plus portfolio. And they all must be aligned with the organization's vision. So if you have projects, programs, and portfolio, which do you think should come first?
Portfolio is first because that's
Project?
level.
Because the portfolio?
Yeah, portfolio. Project is, think of portfolio as a funnel. So think of it as a funnel, and then here you got the vessel. So whenever you so the project, I'm sorry, the portfolio, and this is a portfolio box. So this is a portfolio box, and what is coming down the hill are programs and projects, and they're filling up this vessel with programs and projects, and they're all contained inside the portfolio. Okay, so portfolio is like you catch for all. It's where you're catching all of these programs and portfolios rolling down the hill, and they are all here for the management to sort of get an aggregate view of. If they want to know how many projects and programs are in our portfolio, they can go to the portfolio and they can start to count. Oh, okay, this is 1, 2, 3, and this way they'll know how much money they have invested in these projects, and how many of them have been successful, how many of them are on hold, how many of them are waiting to be started. So we are right that the first answer was number 1, portfolio, because of this reason. Now the second would be either projects or programs. Projects are singular entities. Programs contains more than one project, which have the same goal. So if the program goal is to reduce the climate issues, change the climate, or minimize climate change, then if that's the goal, then all the projects that we are going to execute on or pursue will, even though they may be tackling different aspects of that goal, but in net effect, they're all going to help with the goal of the program. All right, so that was clear, hopefully. So what else I want to... All right, so we internal environment, external environment. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward, right? Anything that's inside the company is the internal environment. Outside the company is the external environment. And who can give me an example of an external environment factor, and so that we're clear?
Internal is like IT and external is like the vendor.
Like the vendor. Excellent, excellent. Vendor, or could be politics, could be government, could be the city, right? Everything external. All right. Yeah, another concept that's pretty important is the difference between product management and project management. And who can tell me what the difference is? Which is bigger in size?
Product management and project management?
Yeah.
I think it depends, because if the company is overall working on one product, let's say they are developing some kind of mission on a Mars, and within that product of their mission, they have different projects. If you go that, so probably this would be making product more broad, more general.
So if it was a factory, right? If you had a factory, then you would be producing a product, right? If you had a factory. But if you had a project instead of a factory, what would you be producing? Product, right? In both cases. In a factory, you are going to produce a product day in, day out, right? That's what the factory does. You put in the supplies, the goods, and then it produces the product, right? In the project, what you put in are people, process, business environment, and obviously attached to people, process, and business environment, you have, money, right? And then you got this project as a result of that. And then out comes a product or a service or a result. So in both cases, this would be considered operations, because it's not a particular project that we are working on. It's just producing the same product again and again and again and again. It's not unique. Here, the project is going to produce a unique project. You can produce a unique product, a unique service, a unique result. In the factory, it's going to produce the same product again and again and again, because that's what the factory does, right? Same again. So that's how you can sort of differentiate. Also, when people talk about operations, think of the factory. When they talk about the project, think of sort of an enclosed environment where you bring in people, resources, and you produce something. And you have a certain timeline in a project within which you do it. In a factory,
can we give an example, like saying the factory is manufacturing helicopters, and the project would be making advancements to the production line of the engines, let's say.
Yeah.
So in this case, the product would be a broader idea, right? You said which one is bigger? Like in this case, would be product bigger than the project, because the product is considered to be some main goal of the factory, and project would be some just a sideway goal that is just
outcome. Yeah, would be an outcome of the project. So if you look at which comes first, the project comes first, right? You start the project, and then comes the product, right? The project produces the product. So the product life cycle would start somewhere inside the project and will continue forever until the product dies, or product is no longer, or becomes obsolete. On the other hand, the project life is temporary. It starts here, ends here, and it's done. It just produces this product and then it dies. It's done. In a factory, it produces a product and it continuously produces a product for as long as the factory is, actively alive. So in a factory, you don't actually create a unique product. You just create the same product again and again and again. In a project, you create a unique, like you said, a unique engine, maybe a unique type of phone. Once you create that product, that unique type of phone, then you give the phone to the factory and says, go ahead and produce 1 million phones. So the factory becomes the operations, which just takes what you have produced in as a part of the project. One time, you've given the blueprint to the factory and said, now you go ahead and reproduce this one as many times you want, because I've done it. I've created this product as part of a temporary endeavor that was a project. So are we sort of clear on how this works? So product management is about product, the outcome. Product management, how well we build this product, as part of the project. Product management. The project management is, we need to build a unique product. What are the processes we're going to use to do that? What sort of people we would need, what sort of equipment we would need, what sort of project management methodology we would need to create this unique product as a result of that effort. Okay, moving on to stakeholder. So when do we first encounter a stakeholder? Letters.
At the onset of the project.
At the onset of the project. So if, let's say, this was the initiation box, we identify the stakeholder, or at least start to identify the stakeholder here. And the very first stakeholder would be who?
The sponsor?
The sponsor. So the very first stakeholder is going to be our sponsor. Or sponsors, there may be more than one. Okay, and talking about stakeholders, we have to, once we meet the sponsor, we have to understand their need and their interest, right? So the two main things, interest and their need. There's two important aspects of stakeholders. What are they interested in, and what do they need? And the reason we want to know this is because these guys have a lot of what?
Power.
So they have power over the team, over the other stakeholders, depending on where they are in the food chain. So we have to understand their interest, their need. We, as PMs and teams, we have to understand their need and their interest, and we have to analyze each stakeholder's interest and influence level. Who is an executive director, who's a director, who's who. So once you know their level of influence, then we have to find out their expectations accordingly about their interest and about their need. And so that's important. We have to prioritize stakeholders who have high level of power and interest. So the ones that have high level of power, high level of interest, we are going to put them in the top, and then the ones who have a little less power and less interest, we're going to put them a little bit lower in the hierarchy, but we're going to make sure that we meet everyone's interest, everyone's need. And we find out about them by engaging with them, and we find out how they want to communicate with us being the PM, us being the team. So that's part of the responsibility of the project manager, especially to find out their communication style. How would they like to communicate with the team, with the project? And so do they want formal communication? Do they want informal communication? So we have to sort that out. And where do we keep all this information about the stakeholders? What is that document where we put all this information?
The registry?
Registry. It's a stakeholder registry. Just like we have risk registry, there is a stakeholder registry. Good. So we always, even though we start to identify stakeholders in the initiation phase, we continually do that in the planning and also in the execution. So this process never ends in the initiation; it continues. All right. Let's do a little bit more of the difference between, and we'll probably touch on this on next week when we'll talk about leadership and communication, but let's just briefly talk about it. What's the difference between management and leadership? So let's take another blank here. So what's the difference between a manager versus a leader? What do you guys think?
A manager is someone who is in charge of the operations, in charge of the people, and disperses instructions and such. A leader is someone who is a part of the team and kind of teaches and shows and gets people to do things by example.
Absolutely. So manager follows the processes, right? Process and procedures of the company, while the leader is the one who can change the processes based on what he or she hears from the people. So he is more of a coach, teacher, and also has influence to change these processes that the manager is following on a day-to-day basis. So that, and also, as part of that, they provide direction. So just at this level, let's keep it at this level for right now, even though there are more things I could say about that, but we're going to talk about that next week. Let's see. Yep. So next thing, what are the two approaches to tackling a project? There are two approaches. If this was our smiley, and these are the two hands, what would be on one side, what would be on this side? The two approaches. Who can tell me what are the two approaches of actually tackling a project? One is sort of a short time frame based, time box based, and the other one is a little bit lengthier. It's more of phased base. So I gave you
I'm
enough
old
hint
school,
here.
so I call it waterfall and agile, but
Okay. That's hold on. Waterfall, or
I always forget the other one.
predictive.
Yeah.
And this one would be agile or adaptive. So two approaches, and then and you can organize your project under 5 phases. This is the easiest of all, right? Who can tell me that?
Initiation, planning,
Yeah.
execution, monitor and control, and closing.
Okay, great. Initiation. planning, execution, monitoring, control, and closing. Okay, great. So here is the stakeholder. Initially, we get them, we start to identify them, and then we look at the approaches that we're going to be using to tackle the project, and we're going to organize it by this phased approach: initiation, planning, initiation, and closing. Now, using whether agile, we use agile, or whether we use waterfall, predictive, doesn't matter. We can still use these 5 ways to organize the project. Okay, that's good. Also, sometimes you will hear adaptive being called incremental. So if you see that in the PMP exam, incremental, they are referring to agile because because you do the process in an incremental fashion, right? In a sprint incremental fashion that runs 2 to 4 weeks at a minimum. All right. So what goes on if in the middle that binds them together? There is another approach. What is that?
Hybrid.
Hybrid.
Hybrid. Okay, so we got hybrid, which is sort of in the middle, and you can go back and forth between the two depending on what you're doing. All right, so now let's move on to scope. So we touched on the stakeholder and what the stakeholder is all about. It's about their interest and their need. Now, given that we have met the sponsor and we're starting to identify the stakeholders, we have initiated the project, we have completed the charter. We are now going to move towards the scope. So, what are the three couple of major deliverables here under scope? Who can tell me? Main ones.
The charter.
Oh, charter is initiation. It's not part of scope. So, what is the first thing you got to have?
Requirements.
Yes.
Requirements. So requirement is one of a major deliverable from the scope, and from the requirements you get what?
Budget.
The schedule.
SS.
Scope statement.
Scope statement. Scope statement. From scope statement,
WBS.
You get WBS. From WBS, you get what?
Work packages.
Schedule.
Decomposition.
Yeah, work packages are here. You decompose this, right? You decompose this, you get your work packages, and then you get your schedule. Great. These are the sort of the main deliverables. Now, while we are going down this line here, requirements, scope statement, WBS, schedule, we are also doing what with the WBS? What sort of thing we're doing? This starts with an R. So we got the WBS now. What WBS is a secret sauce. We're going to use that. It has activity. It has deliverables, but we're going to decompose that into activities, and then we're going to create a schedule. But what else can we do with WBS besides the schedule? What can we use it for? Something that starts with an R.
For risk.
Risk. Yes.
Risk analysis. We can do a risk analysis with the WBS. Also, we can do what's a Q? What can we get from Q? Some sort of metrics. What does Q stands for?
Quality.
Quality. Fantastic. So we can, now that we have the WBS, we can look at risk analysis. We can look at quality. We can look at putting a schedule together. And what about something that starts with a C and then ends up with this?
Cost.
Budget, right? Budget, because all the activities are in this WBS, when you break it down, when you decompose, not before decomposing, it's just deliverables. Once you decompose, you get your activities. And now that you have your activities, you can start to find out
Budget.
the duration, right? Duration of that. Then you're going to sequence that, right? And also you can find out how much each of those is going to cost. And once you have that, you can do your budgeting. So WBS is a sort of very centrally, it's central to all of these different entities. And it's very critical. A lot of PMP questions will give you WBS as the answer. And so you should always see why they've given you WBS. Maybe WBS is the answer. So be very careful about the WBS because it has many functions. It not only helps in creating the schedule, but it also helps to do the risk analysis. It helps to refine your requirements and also do your quality metrics. What are quality? Where should we look at? What activity should we look at from a quality standpoint? It's all, WBS will clearly show you all of that if you open it up. And then obviously the cost here. Now, before we jump from the charter to the scope and start to look at the requirements and the scope statement, what if we were to buy a solution? What are we going to do? Not build, but buy.
Get a vendor.
RFP. So there are two things we could do. We could do RFI, which is request for information only, or RFP, which is request for proposal. So if I was just wanted to find out information about, let's say, a couple of companies, I can send RFI to them and say, these are my requirements. Just give me information about your company. That's it. I'm not interested in signing up or anything or completing a contract with you. I just want information so I can sort of analyze you. That would be RFI. RFP, they know that you have engaged them not only to provide you with information about them, but also one of them could be selected to work with you as part of to partner with you to provide you with a solution. So RFP has a different connotation versus RFI. This one requires it requires requirements obviously, but and then what the vendor sends you is this. What is that?
Statement of work.
Statement of work or scope of work. And scope of work, the difference between scope of work or statement of work and versus a scope statement is what?
It's more general. It's not that
Which is more general?
The one that we get from vendor.
The scope statement.
No. The scope of work
statement, the statement of work is made up of more tasks.
This is more intense, has more detail. This one, because it comes from the vendor. The vendor wants to tell you give you the solution and also how they're going to deploy it, implement it. This one is just what's in, what's out, and how am I gonna my acceptance criteria and such. So it sort of refines your requirements. This one says this is it. This is what I'm going to provide you. This is the requirements that I'm going to, based on what your needs are. This is what I'm going to provide to you, and this is the secret sauce. So the how part, it gives you the secret sauce and the timeline with it. This one is just scope statement, just requirements, refined requirements, what's in, what's out. So just keep those things in mind. Scope of work is something that is part of the procurement knowledge area. Scope statement is part of the scope. So the difference really is in the fact that scope of work is a complete package. Scope statement is just focusing on what I need, not how I'm going to do it, but what I need, exactly what I need. Okay, good. Let's see, what else we got there? Okay, so now that we have done this part, I'm going to come into today's topic. So schedule. So what we did on Monday. So let's review some of the stuff that we did on Monday before we start to do the problems and stuff. So there were some concepts we talked about in schedule. So before we get to those concepts, let's start with how we're going to create a schedule. So very first thing we need is obviously we need the requirements, right? And from the requirement, we said we're going to get the scope statement. And from the scope statement, we said we're going to get the WBS. And we said we're going to decompose this to get our tasks and our work package, right? And I said WBS is deliverables only. But you get your task after you decompose, not before. Same thing on if you have a user story from Agile instead of the requirements, same thing. You're going to decompose this to get your tasks. All right. So that's hopefully clear. Now, once you have the tasks, it's called tasks. You get a task list. You get a task list. There are two things you need. You need a task list and a milestone list. Milestone list and a task list or activity list. So you got two lists now coming from this decomposition. Once you have these two lists, you want to create the schedule, right? That's your ultimate goal, is to create a schedule. But in order to put this task in the schedule, you have to do a couple of things. Anyone remember what are the things you have to do the task to get to this schedule? You have to sequence. You have to sequence them, right? And sequence also means dependency. What should be done first, second, third? And so, talking about dependency, there are 4 types of dependencies. Who can remember what are the 4 types of dependencies from Monday?
Is that the style? Stole?
No, mandatory is one. I'll give you one. Mandatory is one dependency. There's internal dependency, external, and there's one last which is
discretionary.
Discretionary.
I couldn't think that word.
Yeah, discretionary. All right. So discretionary dependency is a relationship between 2 tasks that are based on best practices, and they're not mandatory. Obviously, they're not mandatory. Mandatory you got to have. Discretionary you put in there because you need that, obviously, but you have a discretion to not use it if you don't want to. But it's something that you can change or modify to your need. But mandatory is something that you got to have. Internal makes sense. Something external, something from outside. Maybe the government wants to put something into law and they want you to finish your project by a certain date. So it's an external dependency. Internal could be maybe Christmas is coming up and you want your project to end by a certain date again. So you may have some internal criteria that you have to abide by. All right, so those are the four dependencies, very important ones that you need to know. Okay, so let's see, before we get to the schedule, we're going to sequence the schedule, then we're going to estimate, right? We're going to estimate the duration, how long each of these activity is going to take. So if you're going to lay the foundation, how many days? So you're going to estimate. And there are a couple of ways to estimate. One of them is start with a T and the other one starts with a B.
Top down and bottom up.
Yes, the top down is top down more accurate than the bottom up, or bottom up is more accurate than the top down.
The bottom up is the most used, right? The most
And
accurate?
it's more accurate.
Yeah.
And most accurate. Top down is not as accurate. Top down is also called analogous. Bottom up is sometimes called 3-point or right now it's just say 3-point estimating would be one example of bottom up. Okay, so you got the sequence, you got the estimate, and now, given those two, you can start to schedule. Now, if you look at the schedule has, first thing, the schedule has a milestone. The second thing, it has a deliverable. And then it has, under the deliverable, it has tasks. Now, that could be one column. And then on the next column, it usually has a duration, how long it's going to take to lay the foundation, let's say 3 days. And then it's going to say, when are you going to start this? The start date. When are you going to end it? The end date. And then it's going to have the resource, who's going to do it. And then what's the status? What is the percent complete? Or the status? Is it on hold? Is it in progress? Or has it been completed? So at a minimum, the schedule has this whole thing that I've drawn here is also called the network diagram. Network diagram. Because it connects these tasks together, and also it has representation of the dates and time and resources on those tasks, on those activities. Okay. So keep this line in mind. Because it talks about your task, it talks about your duration that you estimated here, it talks about the start and end time of your duration, it talks about your resources that you're going to be assigning to this task, who is going to lay the foundation. You're going to put the name here, so you know when the person is going to start and when the person is going to end, and the person is only going to take 3 days to do it. And the person's name is Tom, and you as a PM are going to do the monitoring and controlling, the MNC. Remember that when you do the execution, you do the monitoring and controlling, and that's what you'd be doing while Tom is working hard. You are observing, this is you observing Tom work and making sure that he finishes the job by this end date. So you can put 100% here and give your manager or your sponsor a thumbs up. All right, so that was a brief overview of some of the things you learned. And what I want to do is every time we meet Monday and Wednesday, we should continue to look at some definitions, some concepts, not about all the chapters, because we probably would need more time, but some of the chapters, some of the time. So this way, by doing it back and forth, you should start to see the picture. You start to see the face of project management and see how things are getting connected. All right. Any questions about what we learned thus far? Was this good? Was this useful?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to continue to do that, because I want to make sure that you are now getting to a point where you are trying to connect things, what is what, and how things are sort of, related, relationships, how they're related, and why we do the way we do, and how it all makes sense. All right, so let's jump to problems. And by doing problems, you're going to learn more about the concepts as well. So we're going to do risk first. And one thing I noticed when I did my PMP that they were all situational questions. There was no questions where I had to use the calculator. There was no question where I have to do any math. There was, I don't remember at all. Maybe there was one. Yeah, communication. There is something called channels, so there may be a question on that, and we'll cover that next week. So which is good. If it's good, you don't have to worry. All those things we did in the cost. Remember, EV, earned value. We did that. So I don't remember, or maybe you may get a problem on earned value. Yeah, you probably will get something from earned value, but it won't be a difficult one. Easy math. But as far as this chapter is concerned, risk, there is the only I think there's only one equation here, the EMV, right? This EMV is the only equation here that you have to remember. What EMV is equal to, probability times impact. That's it. That's all you need to remember here. As far as risk chapter is concerned, the scheduling chapter also used to have a lot of problems, but I noticed that in the exam they are not really having you do any problems. They just want you to understand what's going on and how can you speed up, slow down. If things are slowing down, how can you speed up? So that's good because we don't have to worry about confusion and complexity. It's all about understanding. Understanding is what will make you win the race. All right, so let's start to tackle this. If I can get my magnifying glass up here. There we go. And move this a little bit here so you guys can see it. Oh, so we have a problem.
It starts with math.
It starts with math. So hold on a second. Before we get started, I want to give you a couple of minutes to look at this and come up with your answers. But while you're doing that, I'm going to get my book. My book is on the other. Okay, give me 2 minutes. I'll be back. Okay, all right. I have my 10th edition here, and let's all. Those who have this book should open up this. Let me just tell you what page these problems are in that book. Page 400. All right, so we're on page 400, and yeah, all of these problems are, and there are quite a few problems actually, which is good. And we'll see how many we can do today. All right, so let's see if we can solve this problem. So like I said, the equation is very easy: probability and impact. If a project has a 60% chance of a 100,000 profit, so 60% chance, so 0.6 times. So probability and impact, right? So only I could write here. I don't think I can write here now. Okay. So yeah, I can just do it this way. So now I can. So it's small. I know you have a hard time, but I'm gonna make this larger after we complete this particular one. So if a project has, let me do one other thing. Stop here for a second and stop my video so I can come close and not. All right, so there we go. I want to get close to here so I can see it. So if a project has 60% chance of 100,000 profit, 60% chance would mean 60 $60,000, right? $60,000, 60%, and a 40% chance of 100,000 loss. So 40% would be 40,000. So that's a loss. This is a profit. This is a loss. The expected monetary value EMV for the project is. So in this case, EMV would be a difference, right? Would be a difference between the gain and a loss. So that's the answer. You guys are with me?
Yes.
Okay, so the answer is C. So I've done this one for you. Next one is also a problem. So let me do that also. So assuming the ends of a range of estimates are plus minus 3 sigma from the mean, which of the following range estimate involves the least risk? Now, when it comes to plus minus 3 sigma, so what do you think would be the answer here? So we have one formula that you're aware of, is 3-point estimate formula, which says optimistic plus pessimistic plus most likely divide by 3. That's one. That's one. So question is, how much is 3 sigma? 30 days plus or minus 5 days, 22 to 30 days, optimistic is 26, most likely is 30, and and pessimistic is 33, mean is 28. So if you have sigma, so going, there's a difference of 3 here. So between 26, you have there's 30 here, there's 3 here, and you have 4 here. Unless we know what this means, we cannot solve this problem. So let's just put a question mark on this one for right now. Let's put a question mark on this. We'll come back to it. We have to find out what plus minus 3 sigma means. So let's look that up, and then we can see, which one would. And they're talking about following a range here. So range is 30 days plus minus 5 days. This one is not, because plus minus 5 days. So I think the 3 is that plus minus 3. So this cannot be, because it's plus minus 5. 22 to 30, the difference here I see about 8. The difference of 8 here. Mean of 28 doesn't mean it. I don't know what that means. So this one could be the answer, but let's see. There's a difference of 3 here, and the difference between this and this is about 4. So it's close, but I still want to go back to figure out what this means. So let's just put a question mark on this one. Move on to number 3. So this is not a numeric one, so we can get started on this one. Some of these are, but it's okay. Number 3. Who wants to work on number 3?
Can you zoom in? Yeah.
Let me make this a little bigger. Hold on a second. Let's see. Yeah, there he goes. Here. All right. Javier, go for it.
Okay. Your new project is tasked with designing a robotic device. I already like it. A successful outcome for this high-profile project will create a technological breakthrough and significant market opportunity. But there is a lot of uncertainty about the technology and requirements. The CFO has asked you to determine as quickly as possible whether the project is viable. What would be the best approach for doing this? So fastest way, quick, to see if the project is viable. Ask the team to perform thoroughly proof of concept tests, not do a risk-based spike to determine if the Kansas testing facility is tornado proof. That doesn't make any sense.
So this one you
Yeah,
can
I'm throwing that away right away.
Throw this one because tornado proof really throws you off. Okay, go to C.
Has the team begin planning and development and see if they reach an impasse? No. Do an exploratory spike. Yeah, spike is agile or search. To research potential quality control issues and ways to mitigate them.
Okay, so before you answer, so A and D are good. Now you have to make sure that here do you see agile or do you see waterfall? Which one do you see in the problem?
Hold on, let me see. A little certainty about the technology and requirements. The CISO has to determine as quickly as possible whether a project is viable. Best approach will be agile, but
yeah, actually, it could be, it could not be. But it doesn't say though.
It doesn't say one way or the other. No.
But one thing that is, since it's talking about viability, right? So that means you have to have some sort of proof, right, before you can do any further development. And so in this year, there's experimentation here, right? But if you look at here, it's talk about proof of concept testing. Proof of concept testing, and here is a little bit of experimenting here. So between those two, which one would be better? Do you want to?
No, it's definitely A. So ask the team to perform a thorough proof of concept tests before starting the development. You don't want to start until you get the green light. So I think it's A.
So proof of concept prototyping is another. Prototyping is equal to proof of concept. So if you come across the word prototyping, that means you're trying to do a proof of concept. Before you actually move on to develop something, you're testing. You're testing on a very small scale to make sure that your solution is working. And that's why you do a proof of concept or prototyping before you actually move on to develop something. All right, so who wants to do number 4? Any volunteers?
I'll go.
Go for it.
If a risk has a 20% chance of happening in a given month and the project is expected to last 5 months, what is the probability that this risk event will occur during the 4th month of the project? So A, less than 1%, B, 20%, C, 60%, D, 80%. Now, I've already established that I'm horrible at math, but if it's a 20% chance, if I take the 100%, I divide it by the 5 months, that's 20% each month. So it's a 20% chance that it could happen in the 4th month. That's how I did the math.
Yeah, so 20% is the answer. Also, you can look at it from another point of view. Also, if the risk is 20% in a given month, does it really matter which month it is? It's just going to be 20%.
Right, that too.
Yeah, so both ways you should come to 20% as the answer. Okay, moving on to number 5. Who wants to take this one on?
I can try.
Okay, go ahead, Olivia.
If a risk event has a 90% chance of occurring and the consequences will be $10,000, what does 9,000 represent? Risk value or present value, expected monetary value, or contingency budget? So 90%. So I think it's gonna be like the first one that we're gonna do the impact multiplied by the probability. I may be wrong.
What is that? What is that?
The EV. So the number C.
C, EMV. Yeah, EMV would be an impact divided by the percentage probability, and you get 9,000. Okay, this was the easy one. It's one of those that they're gonna ask for sure, something like this. All right, who wants to number 6? Azim,
Okay.
are you still
Okay.
here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Most
go
of the project risks will be identified during which risk management process? Perform quantitative risk analysis and identify risks and monitor risks, perform qualitative risk analysis and monitor risk, identify risks and perform qualitative risk analysis. So it's a game of words now, because it's
keyword. Look at the keyword in the problem. Keyword in the problem.
Yeah. So the
Identify.
keyword would be project risks will be identified. Identified.
So where will it be identified? Where are you identifying?
So yeah, first of all, we need to identify. Well, in B it says identify risks and monitor risks, and then others. The D also says identify risk and perform qualitative risk analysis. That's why it kind of.
Oh yeah, so so B and D both have identify risk, right?
Yeah.
And so most of the project risk says most of the project risk will be identified where during which management process. So we know it's going to be identified in this one, right? In identifying. Now, when you do monitoring, also you are sort of also identifying when you're doing monitoring. So that's why monitoring is a better answer than the qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative risk analysis is where you're sort of going into the risk and finding out what is the quality of this risk. When you do the monitoring, you are also identifying when you're monitoring as well. So identifying risk is the first step, but when you're monitoring and controlling the project, you're also identifying risk while you are trying to mitigate risk. So B is a better answer than D.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What about when we are in a process of identifying risks, and then we need to provide mitigations for the risks, right? And if we choose, because we are identifying in the same process, it is done in the same process, right? Identifying and developing mitigations and developing some budgets to cover those risks.
So let's just do a review here. So the first step is identification. Here you identify the risk. The second step is you do qualitative analysis. Qualitative analysis. Then you do quantitative analysis. And so let's see qualitative analysis. Let's say you said we could have an accident during traffic. So that's the event.
Yes.
Accident during traffic. Qualitatively would be during traffic. It could happen during the traffic light, for example. When you have maybe when you are in green. That's where the probability of having accident is the most compared to when the car has stopped. You are at yellow or red, but when green, traffic is obviously in the flow, and that's where most of the accidents do occur. So this is qualitatively sort of describing where the traffic could potentially happen. And quantitatively, what is the probability of that happening? If when you are in green, probability is the highest here, right? Is the highest. So identify the risk, define it qualitatively, define it quantitatively, and then you talk about the response. How am I going to mitigate the risk if it does happen? So you go first step, second step, third step, and fourth step. And then you give it to somebody to own it, ownership. That's the fifth step. So that based on this, if you go back and look at the problem, let's go back and look at the problem now. Let's look at the problem. So it said, where do you identify the risk? So we said it's that one, and we said it's not, and I said the monitor risk is where you actually also identify. You identify risk, yeah, that's for sure. You do that, but then when you're in monitoring and controlling, that's also where you identify risk, because that's part of your job. When you're building something, while you're building, you're monitoring and controlling what you're building. And as you're monitoring and controlling, you're also identifying anything that may go wrong. So this is a good answer. Qualitative risk analysis is the second step, right? First step was identify, second step was qualitative analysis. So this is still analyzing, not identifying. This is not an identification step here. This one is, but this is not. So this is the best answer, B.
Okay.
All right. So moving on to 7. Who wants to take the next one? Letras.
What kind of change-driven project would gain the most benefit from conducting a project pre-mortem exercise? A high-volume project with clear specifications for technology and requirements, an urgent, risky project with a hard deadline, a project that will require process tailoring, a long-term, high-visibility project. What kind of change-driven project?
Okay, so but before you answer, tell me what change-driven project is. Is that a waterfall? Is that a predictive? Or is that an agile or adaptive? Which category does this fall under? Change-driven.
Change-driven is predictive. No?
Predictive is you already know.
You already know.
Predictive, you can predict, right?
Agile is sprints.
Yeah, agile sprints, and also it's changing, right?
Okay.
Every sprint, you do something different, right? So it's changing. So
Right.
first of all, we know they're talking about what kind of change-driven would gain the most benefit from conducting a project pre-mortem exercise.
So that's agile. So that means it probably wouldn't be a high value project with clear specifications for technology and requirements, because in agile it changes kind of sprint to sprint. Something could change, and that's why they do them in shorter, smaller splurges. An urgent, risky project with a hard deadline. Maybe a project that will require process tailoring, maybe, because that's kind of agile. That's why you do it in sprints, because you may have to tailor it to each sprint. You may have to change the process for each sprint. A long-term, high visibility project. So I would get rid of A and D. Because a long-term, high visibility project, I would think, is more a predictive project, because it's longer and high visibility. That means that people are watching, and so you really kind of want to be on the straight and narrow about it. What kind of changing project would gain the most benefit from conducting a project pre-mortem exercise? I don't really know what they mean by pre-mortem.
I agree with her. I have heard postmortem, but never pre.
Yeah, and I think of death when you hear that.
Yeah, well, postmortem is usually retrospective,
after,
right?
post is after, right?
Yeah.
Pre is before. So before. So
yeah, but looking at Wikipedia, it says it's also after, so that doesn't help.
is that what it says? It says after?
It says a pre-modern or pre-modern without the dash, It's a managerial strategy in which a project team imagines that a project organization has failed and then works backwards to determine what potentially could lead to the failure for the project organization. So it's predicting a failure. So yeah, it is strange. I never heard of that concept. My bad. I misread that. So yeah, it's they
So I guess
imagine the project failing and working backwards to see where the failure point was. But okay. So it will have to be.
So I would think that is B because if based on Javier's description, they expect high risk.
Yeah.
So I would think it would be an urgent, risky project with a hard deadline if they expect it to fail and are going to work backwards.
Yeah, I would agree. B is probably the best answer. Even the book says D. I don't agree with book's answer. B, because it says an urgent, risky project with a hard deadline, and then it kind of change-driven project would gain the most benefit from. Yeah, I mean, I would say B would be the best answer here, and not D.
I mean, you could have. So yeah, I mean, you could have agile long-term projects, right? I'm working one right now. It's a year old, and we have an agile environment. So and it's high visibility project as well. So, but I don't.
Yeah, I was just.
I don't see how doing the pre-modern. How can you imagine failure points? I don't know.
It says these analysis sessions serve as a proactive risk assessment of potential project failure. Yeah. Before that.
Well, maybe
that's crazy.
The book is wrong.
The question doesn't make any sense, actually. The question.
Let's move on. Let's move on to our next one. Let's go to the next one. All right, let's go to this one. All right. So, all right. Who hasn't had a chance? Go ahead. Go ahead, Javier.
I'll try. You're iterating the project management plan, and we'll be meeting with the sponsors to get approval. There have been some problems on recent projects because the projects were started quickly, and it was assumed that there would be future challenges. The sponsors will want assurances that this project will not have similar issues. Man, I'm having a flashback. You have evaluated an approach and have planned the project, including how you will manage risk in order to deliver a better outcome. You have a few minor risks on the watch list. What, if anything, should be done with those risks? If there's in the watch list, they're low risks. Document them for historical use on other projects. Document them and revisit them during project monitoring and controlling. That's probably a good answer. Document them and set them aside because they are already covered in your contingency plans. No,
doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Yes,
you will plan for the ones that you know might happen, not the ones you don't think will happen. Document them and give them to the customer.
No.
So I guess it's B.
B, because I think as the watch list by definition means those are you're not your secondary. Those are the one that you don't want to worry about. You want to monitor them, but not have a response plan for them. They don't have a response plan, so you document them and revisit them during your monitoring and controlling. That's all you do. All right, this was I think okay problem there. Let's go to number 9.
You can try. Okay, you are embarking on a new technology upgrade project that is considered key to future growth of the business. Because of the critical nature of the project, you recognize the importance of performing through risk management, and you want to make sure you have considered all relevant project information before beginning. All of the following are always inputs to the risk management process except historical information, lesson learned, work breakdown structure, project status report. before I read except, I would choose the WBS because this is the center of everything.
So that's a good answer.
Yeah, but it says except.
Yeah, except. So this cannot be the answer because it's a good answer.
Yeah.
you want an answer that's not good.
Yeah. Okay. Historic information, I never heard it before, so I don't think so. It's gonna be historical.
So historical information is always when you start a project, you Google. Remember, you Google or you ask people about the project, or if they've done a project like similar project. So historical information is always looked at, researched, and used. So you cannot reject that. You cannot reject historical information.
It's almost the same as lessons learned, right? Historical information.
Lessons learned is very similar to historical information, even though it's cataloged differently. But I agree with you. It's very similar.
And okay, project status line is this. Okay, I'm sorry.
The what?
Well, lessons learned comes after the project. Well, it happens. You should log them as in the project, but the lessons learned you kind of review once the project is over to kind of make them historical information, right?
That's true. But when you start a project, you have access to all the old projects' lessons learned from other projects. You have all of that data. You have the historical information. You have the lessons learned, not for previous projects. You have access to that. You have work breakdown structure, something the secret sauce, how you are going to get to. What is it that is not as good as these, among those four, which is not.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think of this problem as a input-output question.
Mm-hmm.
So for risks, you do input historical information and lessons learned. So, like what has happened before in this company. What process breaks. What kind of stuff you want to know. And the work breakdown structure is the secret sauce, right? It has everything that you need. That's the main body to get the risk status. So project status reports, it's an output.
Yeah, it's an output. It's probably the worst answer. Is you have to pick the best, and then whatever's left is the wrong answer.
Okay.
Right? So, all right, good. So moving on. Number 10. Who hasn't had a chance? Who hasn't had a chance to do a problem? Go ahead. Who was that?
I'll go. Risk thresholds are determined to help. Risk thresholds are determined to help. The team rank the project risk. The project managers estimate the project. The team schedules the project. Management know how other managers will act on the project. Okay, so it's a whole sentence. Risk thresholds are determined to help. Which one? That's how they should have.
What's the key word in the problem? The key word.
Risk. Help.
Other than the risk.
Help.
There's another one.
Thresholds are determined to help.
Threshold. Do you know what threshold means?
It's like the thing
limit,
that you
some limit, right?
Measure, right?
Some measure, some limit. So risk. So it's some sort of limit, right? So some sort of prioritization of some sort, right?
Right.
High, low, something like that. So given that, risk threshold are determined to help the team.
The team rank the project risk. Because if we're talking about like measuring, then I would equate that to rank.
Rank. Yeah, you got to know the definition of threshold to be able to answer this one. So threshold is where you got high. You have some people have a different threshold, some risk threshold than other people. So once you know the threshold of each of your risks, you can then say, where do we stand? Where do we stand with this? And so ranking makes a lot of sense. A is a good one. So what else could be good? The project manager estimate the project has nothing to do with threshold. Estimating has nothing to do with threshold. So B is out. The team schedule the project. Schedule has nothing to do with risk. That's out. Or nothing to do with risk threshold. Management know how other managers will act on the project. It doesn't have anything to do with risk threshold, so ranking seems like the best answer. Just be eliminating all the other ones. So it's always good to look at the question and look for keywords in the question and see which of those keywords may define the answer somehow. So good. Moving on. Number 11. Who wants to do number 11? Takira.
I'll try to do it. A new project manager is beginning work on her first project. She's planning to use her training to implement many risk identification methods. She realizes that some identified risks will be managed through the project, while others will not be considered important enough to deal with. She's aware that risk management isn't going through the project, um, as new risks may be identified. Risk rating may change, and the project itself may change. She realizes that all the following are common results of the risk management except contract terms and conditions are created, the project management plan is changed, the communication management plan is changed, the project charter is changed. So she realizes that common risks of of risk management. Okay, she realizes that all the following are common result of the risk management except. So what is okay, so the problems with the management risk. Okay, so something was wrong with the management risk, and then we get the result. What would that be? I guess that's the question. So contract terms and conditions.
So if something changes in a project, for example, the risk in the project goes up or down because something has changed, something that's significant, which of those would it impact the most?
Yeah,
If something.
so yeah, I understand the question. So something happened with the project risk management. Risk management is done on the stage of planning, and so that's the beginning. And but so if we start from the bottom, the project charter is changed. I'm guessing that might have been, but that's before the risk management was done. So then we go with the communication management plan is changed. Mm, I don't know.
So we're looking for a wrong answer. We're looking for a wrong answer here.
Yeah, the project management plan is changed, and project management. This could be the answer, I guess, because that's the general. So it's created in the beginning, the project management plan, and contract terms and conditions are created. Well, contract terms and conditions, they are created.
So you can also throw things out if you don't like something that doesn't make any sense, that have to do with risk.
I think we can
throw it out.
I don't know if I'm well. I think we can throw A away and we can throw D away. But D, no, not D. Let's keep D. So we can throw A away, and C. So what I'm guessing is something between B and D.
So let's just stop here. I think maybe I should clarify some things here.
Okay.
So in a project, you are trying to build something, and as you're building, you come across a risk, and so when that happens, and usually when you're monitoring and controlling, that's where you're trying to keep an eye, and at that point you may discover risks as you are monitoring and controlling. So when that happens, you are very far away at that point in time from what? Charter was in the initiation, right? You're very far from the charter. So impacting the charter at that point is not going to happen unless you totally change the project. If you totally change the project, then you'll go to the charter document. So let's look at the A. Contract terms and conditions are created. So if there's a risk impact to any of those contract terms and conditions, yes, there may be some impact if a risk comes up. Maybe something solution is bad, maybe. So the contract terms is a good answer. The project management plan is changed. Okay, if the risk that it's going to impact is going to impact the project plan, so that's a good answer. So if risk happens, the communication management plan is changed. Yes, the communication plan is going to change if there's a risk because you have to report to people about the risk. So ABC sounds like a good, okay answer, or good answers. D, the product charter is changed. You don't change the charter unless, like I said, there's significant amount of change in the project where you have to go to the sponsor and tell the sponsor, we need to totally change this project. Because once the charter is signed off, you cannot go ahead and start changing the charter. That's what you're building. You're building what's in the charter, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to touch the charter. So D is the answer because of that fact. That risk is going to be in the contract, be in the plan, be in the communication, but not in the charter. Because you cannot touch the charter. It's just like, that document stays intact and is your guideline for the whole project. Even though risk may come up, the charter is not going to get impacted by it. Other communication word, management plan word, contracts word, because maybe the solution is bad. Maybe the secret sauce has some gaps. So the charter would stay intact unless, like I said, unless there's a drastic change to the solution where they're saying, hey, we cannot do this, we cannot build this, then go back and redo the charter.
So
And let's build
basically,
something else.
we can say that the project charter, when it is changed, it is not because of the bad risk management, right? So this would be the answer.
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
Something significant to the solution, but not due to risks and stuff. All right, so I think this was a good learning point here for all of us. Let's go to 12.
I'll do 12. You identify several risks on your project for which purchases insurance is a possibility. The insurance company for your firm uses has quoted reasonable rates, and your analysis shows that purchases insurance makes sense as a contingency plan in these cases. Your organization has a low threshold of risk, but wants to keep costs in line as the profit margin of the product of this project is low. So, okay, the strategy of purchasing insurance is best considered as an example of risk. Okay, so having an insurance company is transferring, so it's going to be B. You're transferring the risk to the insurance company.
Okay, the book answer is...
Tell me, is B.
Is what? Is B?
It should be B.
Yeah, it is B. So you're right. You're right, and makes sense because when we were doing a risk response, we said you use insurance when you want to transfer your risk. So that's by definition. So sometimes the question will become easy because they are looking at the definition. So, but you won't find a whole lot of those in the exam, though.
Yeah, I know.
But it's okay. It's good to it keeps you encouraged. All right, let's move on. And so we were on number 8, 12, 13. Okay, 13. Okay, after a break, we'll jump to the next chapter. But okay, it's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. We'll continue to do some more. All right. Who wants to go with the next one? Number 13.
I can take it.
Okay.
Okay, the project has been chartered to address concerns of low levels of customer satisfaction with the help desk of a large online retailer. You and your team are considering options, including upgrading computer system and software programs, adding additional help desk staff, and improving help desk training. You realize the impact of such changes will be difficult to measure, and you're finding it challenging to evaluate the exact cost impact of risk and response the team has identified. You should evaluate on an quantitative basis, numerical basis, qualitative basis, or economic metric basis. Okay, let's exclude the number D because we didn't.
Yeah, that's something we don't know. So
Yeah.
Out the door.
Yeah. So the key word I'm looking for is low level. We took something about high, low, and no impact, no probability, but I don't remember is quantitative or qualitative.
Okay, the difference between qualitative is quality,
Okay.
low, medium, high. Quantitative is numeric, probability, impact. Those number, numerical. So
Okay.
that's the difference. Okay. Given
Okay.
that, see if you can answer now.
So it's gonna be then qualitative basis because low levels, high, low levels, no impact, no probability, right?
Yeah, it's a quality, right? They're
Yeah.
talking about levels here, not numeric number. That this was by definition. Okay, great. Who wants to do number 14? Letras.
Outputs of the planned risk responses process include outputs of the planned risk responses process include residual risk, fallback plans, and contingency reserves, risk triggers, contracts, and a risk list, secondary risk, process updates, and risk owners, contingency plans, project management plan updates, and sensitivity analysis. Outputs of the planned risk responses. I don't know the answer to that. Outputs of the plan.
So let's throw some stuff out. Let's throw out the stuff that we don't think makes any sense. So, so you're trying to come up with risk responses. Really, that's what the output should be.
Okay.
So where are the risk response? Let's look at D. Contingency plan. Is that a risk response? It's a plan. So let's throw this one out.
Plan.
Throw this one out.
Okay.
So let me.
It's not a response. It's a plan.
It's a plan. So this out.
Okay.
C is a secondary risk, process updates, and risk. Process update is not a risk response. So even though secondary risk has risks in it, but process updates and risk owners are not risk responses. So we can throw C out because of that reason. Let's look at B. Risk triggers. Okay, they are triggers, not risk responses, but okay. Contracts, that's not risk response. And risk lists, okay, it has a risk in there. So the risk contracts is going to throw, that'll throw the whole. So whenever you find keywords that are embedded inside the answer that don't belong, throw it out.
Okay.
So now you've thrown out B, C, and D because of just doesn't make any sense. You then are focused on number A, and so residual risk. Okay, that's a risk. Fallback plans and contingency reserves. So contingency reserve is a risk response because if you run out of money, you are going to resort to using a contingency reserve. So that's a good answer. Residual risks are if you have a risk and it occurs, another risk can spin off, which is called a residual risk. So that's okay. Fallback plans are like your risk response. If something goes wrong, you have a fallback plan for that. Now, so those three are okay, good. The D, I rejected D was because it said contingency plans. But if you look at the next one, it says project management plan updates. That's not a risk response, right? So any one that doesn't make any sense, you reject the whole thing. So A is that the answer? Okay, so book says A because a risk list, process updates, and sensitivity analysis are not outputs of the plan risk. Okay, we just did it by elimination, process of elimination. Okay, so number 15. Who wants to number 15?
Okay, let me try.
Okay.
Workarounds are determined during which risk management process? Workarounds. Identify risks, perform quantitative risk analysis, plan risk response, or monitor risk. Hmm.
So you got to know MNC, monitor and risk. When you're doing execution, you also have this arrow going from that box, right? There's an arrow goes around that box, and I call that monitor and control all the time when I draw it, right?
Yes.
So what happens in that monitor control is that the PM is looking at people building the product. PM is also looking at to make sure everything is done on time. Trying to control the process, looking for risks, stuff like that. So
Okay.
the PM is
So
monitoring,
it's D.
and so based on that, you say what?
It's D because it's not planning of the risks. It's not performing quantitative risk analysis is done before that, and it's not identifying because identifying is in the beginning of the project. So it's monitoring risks.
Yeah. So because doing the risk management process is made to transfer. We know on 16, right?
Uh,
15.
15. Okay. Workarounds are determined during which workarounds are when things are being built, right? Things are being
Yes.
built, and there may be a risk of some sort, and they're looking for a workaround is another way to band-aid your solution. So all of that is happening. All the risks of those sorts are coming up during monitor and control process, that's why you picked D as the right answer.
Yes.
Good. All right. Next one. Javier.
Okay. Doing which risk management process? 16, right?
Yes.
16.
Yeah.
16, sorry. Okay.
16. Okay. Well, I'm actually stuck on 15. I'm thinking the answer should be C. So
Okay, let's forget it.
workarounds is a response.
Workaround is an action. So you're trying to build something, and you suddenly find a gap in your solution.
So workarounds, but workaround is a response, right? It's not. So
is a response to
an issue.
an
risk that
defect.
can
Yeah,
choose,
an issue.
right?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's a
so
response to an
the
issue.
question is, workarounds are determined. When are they determined? During which risk management process? So what step, right? I'm thinking C because that's when you're planning the responses. You identify them and then you plan the response.
Yeah, but when you're planning something that's pre-issue, a workaround is like you're in the middle of something and what you planned didn't work. And so you have to figure out a different way to get it done, which means you're already in the process of building. That's how I think of workaround. Like at work, if I have an issue that I need the help desk to fix for me and they're taking too long, I find a workaround so I can move on with my task. And so I'm in the middle of getting the work done. When I see plan, then that means I haven't gotten to the actual work yet. I'm considering that I will have this particular risk, and I'm planning on how I'm going to respond to it.
So workaround is not a response. Workaround is an action you take to fix something.
Oh no, I just looked it up. So it says a workaround is an updated, unplanned risk response to an unforeseen risk. So it's workaround is what happens when you don't plan for it.
When you don't plan for it, it's just like you're trying to fix something because you didn't never plan for it, right? You never planned for it. You had to come up with a workaround.
So that then is obvious. It's D. Okay, I'll move on then.
All right, good.
16. During which risk management process is a determination made to transfer risk? Plan. So identify risk, implement risk response, plan risk response, and monitor risks. So I will say C on that one.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Number 18, right? We're on 18.
17.
Oh, sorry. So 17.
A project manager has just finished the risk response plan for $387,000 engineering project. Which of the following should he probably do next? determine the overall risk rating of the project, begin to analyze the risks that show up in the project drawings, add work packages to the project work breakdown structure, hold a project risk review. A project manager has just finished the risk response plan for. Okay, so he's already created the plan. So he's already, so I wouldn't do D because you hold a project risk review before you make the plan. I would think that you already have the plan. You've already reviewed it before you make the plan, which also means that you've already determined the overall risk rating. So I would take out A and D. Begin to analyze the risks that show up in the project drawings, add work packages to the project breakdown structure. I would go C because if I've already made the risk plan, then I'm in the WBS and I'm ready to make my schedule and add where I think the risk would come up.
Yeah, so you've done your risk planning. Now you're ready to build, right? You're ready to build.
Yeah.
And so other ones are talking about risks. Now you're past that point now of risk planning.
Right.
Risk response is where you already planned the risk response, right? Now you want to go start your build, and C is where you're actually doing some work here. And WBS is there. When we have WBS, you look at that first as your answer. But yeah, logically, I think it all makes sense. This risk happened, and you got a plan, risk response plan. Now you're going to start to build and keep your plan on the side in case you have to go use it while you're building your product. All right, good. 18. We're going to stop at 18 and then we'll maybe jump to schedule. So who wants to do 18? Olivia.
Project manager analyzed the quality of risk data and asked the various stakeholders to determine the probability and impact of a number of risks. He's about to move to the next process of risk management. Based on this information, what has the project manager forgotten to do? Okay. Evaluate trends in risk analysis, identify trigger, provide standard risk rating metrics. All background. So quality of data. Is this okay? I will do I remember the risk rating metrics is the risk register, right?
Mm-hmm.
You forgot to do a risk register, and it's the same like the risk rating metrics. It's the same name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's gonna be C.
Yeah, so you have done your qualitative, and
Yes.
now you are beginning to do. Now you're talking about impact and probability, right? So that's more of quantitative now. So in order to do quantitative, you need some sort of matrix. So identifying triggers, that's going to come later. Right now, you're trying to do your qualitative, then quantitative. So,
it's the most recognizable word in here.
yeah. So B is out for sure. Evaluate trend in risk analysis. That's sort of out. Makes no sense. C, fallback plan. No. So I'm sorry. D. C is the one that you're left with, and so that is what is the right answer also. So I just did by elimination, eliminating answers that didn't make any sense. So that's another way. When you don't know the answer, try to eliminate stuff and see what's left, and that should be the answer. So that's another way of handling these. But we did it logically also. I think Olivia, you did it logically. That's good. All right, so let's take a break. Let's take a 5-minute break. Let's take a 5-minute break and then come back and start to do some scheduling problems. So I'm going to hold right here and go to that one. Stop. So we get an opportunity to do some scheduling questions. All right, 5-minute break.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر
Okay, is everyone back?
Yes.
All right. So let's jump. We're gonna spend some time on the schedule and see how we do on this one. All right, so let's begin. first one should be an easy one. So before we get to it, let's just make sure we are on this same right chapter in the book.
Okay.
Schedule page is whoever has that old book. We are on page 218. I'm sorry, 209. Who wants to go first?
I can go again.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I remembered by the drawing, the project manager is informed midway through project planning that she was given inaccurate data regarding new regulation affecting the required end date of her project. She may need to make a few adjustments, but she thinks she can still manage the project to complete it before the regulation take effect. She confirmed this by analyzing the sequence of activities with the least amount of scheduling flexibility. What technique is she using? She's using the critical path method because it's the longest and has a flexible to it. And I remember the thing that you draw the foundation 10 days.
Yeah, it's very inflexible. It's not very. It's inflexible because it's the longest, and they're very closely knit together. I mean, they're very closely compacted, lined up tasks, and the longest, and they have zero duration, and zero duration and longest path. Okay, critical path method is the right answer. Good. Number 2. Who wants to go with number 2? Javier.
Okay, I'll take it. A design engineer is helping to ensure that the dependencies within her area expertise are properly defined on the project. The design of several deliverables must be complete before manufacture can begin. This is an example of what type of dependency. Must be completed. So it's a must. So discretionary is not it. External is not it. If anything, will be internal. Mandatory is it. And then scope is.
So I think the key word, like you said, was the mandatory.
Must. Yeah.
Must was the key word. And once you find the keyword, then that makes it easier to pick the right answer, because mandatory is a must, right? All the other ones are can or cannot, but the C has to be. All right, that's good. Number 3 wants to dabble with this one.
Okay, I can do it.
Okay.
Your sponsor and stakeholders have made it clear they wish to be kept informed on the project status. There are many aspects of the project on which you will report, and you want to choose the most appropriate tool to use in each case. Which of the following are generally illustrated better by bar charts than network diagrams? Okay. Logical relationship, critical path, bar charts, critical path, resource trade-off, progress or status. So I need to know what's the difference between bar charts and network diagrams. So
network diagram is a schedule.
Yeah.
Bar chart is where you show status or progress.
Okay. Which of the following generally illustrated by the bar chart status? Critical path, resource trade-off. So progress or status would be in a bar chart, right?
Yeah.
Which of the following generally illustrated better by the bar charts? Yeah, so I think I would go with the D.
Yeah, D is the answer. Bar charts are the two types. There's milestone chart and there is the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is very detailed for the team. The bar chart or milestone chart is for the management, for the stakeholders. All right. Who wants to go with 4? You got to know what heuristic means to do number 4. It's like thumbs up, like hey, this would work. This is good enough.
I'll give it a try.
Okay.
A heuristic is best described as a control tool, scheduling method, planning tool, generally accepted rule. Our wild guess here is a D.
Yeah, it's a D. Heuristic is usually considered a generally accepted rule. So if you knew the definition, you would know the answer. All right, number 5.
Lag means the amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the project finish date. The amount of time an activity can be delayed without delaying the early start date of its successor. Waiting time, the product of a forward and backward pass.
Reject ones that you don't think are good answers.
So I would.
Hello.
About delay, but I would go with B because if I'm thinking about lag time, I'm thinking about something I can't start yet.
Okay. So to get this one, you have to know the definition of lag. So let's look at the definition of lag.
I guess C would be acceptable as well. Okay.
Yes. So let's look at the definition of lag. So for all of you who want to know what lag means, it's a gap. It's sort of a I would say, you have in between 2 tasks, you have a lag of 1 day. So you give it a gap. So let's say what the book says. Olivia, where is gap? Do a quick look up and see what the book says.
Okay, gap in the book, you mean?
Yeah, in the book. Read the definition in the book of a lag.
Okay, which okay, give me 1 second.
Yeah, look in the index.
It says here leads and lags, right?
Yeah, leads and lags. 174, I think, on the old book.
Okay, it's going to be a lead may be used to indicate that the activity can start before its predecessor activity is completed. Actually, the first one, we don't need it. So a lag is waiting time.
Waiting time.
Yeah.
It's like a gap time. Before you start the, let's say after you put the foundation together, once you put the cement in, and there's a lag of few days because you want to dry the cement, right, on the foundation. So that's the lag time, the drying time, where you just leave it idle, waiting time, until you start the next process or next step. All right.
So it's going to be C?
C is the answer. So let's go to the next one. Okay. Who wants to go with number 6?
I'll try.
Okay.
The project manager is new to the company, but has 10 years of project management experience. He is
given.
Oh, that's a he.
No, she is.
She is, right? She is given a medium-sized project and it has to plan so it finishes as quickly as possible because the company has a large list of projects to complete in the coming year. She will be given another project to manage as soon as she has this one baselined. She needs to report on the longest time the project will take. So the longest time is the milestone path. Which of the following
critical path he's talking about.
Yeah, critical path. Sorry. Which of the following is the best project management tool to use to determine this? Breakdown structure, network diagram, bar chart, and the project charter.
Reject the one that are bad answers. Reject the one that are bad answers.
She needs to report the longest time the project will take. The longest time.
So, which is the best tool? Which is the best tool for that?
The secret sauce. A.
Not quite.
I think it's a
in
bar
this
chart.
case. So let's reject the one that are bad answers. So D is a bad answer. A charter, you cannot use charter for determining that. So chart is out. Bar chart is for status. So bar chart is out. Then you're left with breakdown structure, which has tasks, right?
Right.
It's task in it. So that is not a bad answer. It's not a good. It's a good. I guess it's one of the good answers, right?
Right?
Yeah, it has deliverables on it. Deliverables and tasks. It has that. So you can figure things out. But when you look at the schedule is the best answer. But you don't see schedule here, right?
No.
But you see network diagram instead. So network diagram is another way of saying.
Oh, that's right.
It's a schedule. So again, so whenever you see work breakdown structure, yes, that could be a good answer. But see if there's any other answer there. And network diagram is the closest to being a schedule. So network diagram it will help you because it'll have all those boxes drawn on it, right? Those boxes and with connections in between, so you can easily find out the longest path. Because the network diagram will show you that. Work background structure won't show you that. It will just show you tasks. That's all it's going to show you. Actually, deliverables and then decompose tasks afterwards. All right. So we learned something from this one. Let's go to number 7.
Is it my turn now?
Letters.
Oh, okay.
Azim, you want to do
That's
it?
okay.
Go ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. I will let if you want.
Which of the following is correct? The critical path helps prove how long the project will take. That's correct. There can only be one critical path. I don't know if that's an answer. The diagram will the network diagram will change every time the end date changes. A project can never have a negative flow. I'm going with A.
Yeah, I think the B, C, and D are not bad answers, but A is the best answer because it has the word critical path.
Yeah.
Because it says critical path will prove how long the project will take. Yeah, that is true. We know that, right? Critical path has the longest path. So A is the best answer. The other answers are not really wrong because you can have more than one critical path. So the B is wrong then. It says only one. So B is wrong. C, network diagram will change every time the end date changes. Well, that is true. Well, end date changes. If the date changes, network path is not going to change. Yeah, it's going to stay the same. Date changes, well, it won't change. Okay, that's wrong. Okay. A is the correct answer. Let's move on.
Okay.
A is the correct answer. All right. Number 8. Azim.
Okay. Let me open this up a little bit. The Agile project team you are managing is responsible for developing one of the 5 different components of a complex enterprise solution. Your PMO representative tells you she's concerned because your team is using a large story point unit than the other 4 teams. What should you do? Okay, let me read the question again. The Agile project manager team is responsible for developing one of the 5 different components of a complicated resolution. Team is using a larger story point. Tell the PMO that this is the story point your team has chosen, and it doesn't matter how large it is relative to the other teams. Ask your team, I don't think the A is right. Ask your team lead to coordinate their story point metric with the other teams to ensure that the different components interface smoothly. This might be the answer. Explain to the PMO that the size of each team's story point doesn't matter since this is just a theoretical concept, not a real world metric. I also think this is not correct. Show the PMO why your story point has to be larger since your part of the solution has more complex requirements than the other side. So I think some one of either it's B or it's D.
So let's see what the book says. The book says the answer is A.
Wow.
And let's see why the book says the answer is A. So let's talk about the story point first. What is a story
Okay.
point? Requirements for a predictive is what that they are, right? For predictive, when we do or waterfall, we call them requirements. When we talk about agile, we say it's a user story, and then there are story points for those user stories. All right. So the question is about story points here, and relative to other teams. So to know how good or bad you're doing, what do you need to look at? Not the story point, but the velocity. So if your one team is doing worse than the other team, to compare two teams, you look at their velocity and not the story point. But in this case here, you only have this larger story point to deal with, no velocities. So what should you do? So what should you do? So the answer is, it says here, A says, tell the PMO that this is a story point your team has chosen and doesn't matter how large it is relative to the other teams. So yeah, this because we're not talking about velocity, we're talking about story point. So and velocity will give you like velocity is equal to story points. Is equal to user stories per sprint. In this sprint, I did 8 story points, so my velocity is 8. And so next story point, next sprint, I did 6 story points. So my velocity is 6 over there, 8 on this one. So my average is, 6 plus 8 divided by 2. That's my average. So it's almost 7. So that's how you can judge who is doing how much. Now, so A is saying, it doesn't matter what your story point is, the large or small, it does not matter. That's what A is telling you. B is telling you as your team lead to coordinate their story point metric with other teams to ensure that the different components interface smoothly. So this just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what they're trying to say here. And they talk about story point metric. I never heard of story point metric. So B is totally out. Velocity metric. Velocity is what you should be focusing on, not story point metrics and such. So B is out. C, explain to the PMO that the size of each team story point doesn't matter since this is just a theoretical concept, not a real world metric. So again, the metric is velocity. It's not a theoretical concept, but it's not a real world metric. So C is, they're trying to confuse you. The C is also out in that sense. D, show the PMO why your story point has to be larger since your part of the solution has more complex requirements than the other. Again, story points, larger, small, means nothing. Velocity is what matters. So B, C, D are confusing. A is also confusing, but A is at least says that story point doesn't matter, right? What story point you have, it doesn't matter, and doesn't tell you whether you are doing well or not. So if we had known that velocity is what we should be looking at and not story points, A is that's why A is a better answer. B, C, D is not. So, I mean, they will confuse you. So I don't know. Yeah, we did teach you velocity. I remember, but yeah, slowly you're going to build your your knowledge about what each is and how it's treated. So I wouldn't say it's really. It's just a matter of learning. So we have to go through these, understand what velocity is, what story points are. That we don't measure each team by story points. We measure by velocity. How well they are doing their sprints, and what is their velocity, speed by which they do the sprints. So not story points. All right. So that was something lessons learned there. All right. Moving on to number 9. Who wants to do number 9?
I can take it.
Okay.
Oh, you can go ahead, Javier. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Ladies first.
Okay.
This one is easy.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. A new project manager is walking you through the schedule she has created for her project. She asks you about the duration of particular milestone. So she knows how to probably schedule it. What will you tell her about the milestone duration? So obviously, because it has no duration, we just take the work packages, has task list and milestone list. So in the milestone, it doesn't have any duration.
Okay. So this one was relatively easy.
Yeah.
All right. Good. We need easy ones. All right. 10. Javier, you want to do 9, so you got 10
Sure.
now.
Yeah. Which of the following best describes the relationship between standard deviation and risk? There is no relationship. The standard deviation tells you if the estimate is accurate. No. Standard deviation tells you how uncertain the estimate is. Yes. Standard deviation tells you if the estimate has included a pad, like an iPad.
So D you can reject completely. D,
Yeah,
just throw it out.
Yeah. So there is a relationship. So A is wrong. The standard deviation is the difference between what you expect, right, and what could be. So the difference, the plus and minus, right, of any number, the uncertainty. So it's gotta be C.
Yeah, I was looking up I know I did mention standard deviation in our notes, but I was looking at the back of the book to see if we can find something here that we can share. PQRS, standard deviation. Move on to the next one. Number 11. Who wants to do number 11? Azim.
Yes. Okay.
11.
Okay. You have identified a diverse group of stakeholders, and you will need to report information in a variety of ways to meet their different communication needs. When will you use a milestone chart instead of a bar chart?
This is something I was alluding to earlier. When you use a milestone chart and when you use a bar chart. So if milestone chart is high level, that means it is not for teams, right? Milestone chart will give you a milestone, big block of information, something at high level. So only stakeholders wants to see the milestone chart. The bar chart will have more information about the task, more detail, a little bit more. So now that you know the difference between the two, when will you use which one?
Project planning. Okay, when will we use a milestone chart instead of when will we use a milestone chart?
So is it B or is it C?
Or probably reporting to team members if it's no, probably reporting
milestone is for bigger.
Yeah, reporting to, so we will use the milestone chart instead of bar chart to report to managers.
Yeah, so B or C?
C.
Because milestone chart is going to give you information at high level.
Yeah.
And people who like information at high level are leaders.
Yeah.
Right? Champions, directors, executive directors, and they are usually management. That's why milestones chart is for management. Bar chart would be for team, because that's the next level down. All right, moving on. These are not too bad, but let's see how the next batch is going to be. All right, let's see. 12, Litris.
To help them determine the schedule baseline, the team has drafted a network diagram. The project manager adds the time estimates for each activity to establish the critical path for the project. They discovered the project has 3 critical paths. Which of the following best describes how this discovery will affect the project? It makes it easier to manage. It increases the project risk. It requires more people. It makes it more expensive. So, which of the following describes how this discovery will affect the project? They discovered the project has 3 critical paths. So I don't think, and I could be wrong, that it would, just because it has 3 critical people. I mean, man.
It's confused. It's going to bring out more confusion if you have 3 critical paths.
Which
so
means
what does confusion lead
it
to?
increases the risk. It could increase the risk or the people or the expense. So it definitely isn't easier to manage because it has several critical paths. So we'll take out A. Let me see. To help them determine the schedule that the team has drafted, the project manager adds the time estimates for each activity, established the critical path. They discovered the critical path has.
So does the critical path have anything to do with expense?
No.
So reject D. So reject A, reject D. You're left with B and C. So read B and C, see which one is most likely. The answer.
It increases the project risk. It requires more people. So I'm thinking it increases the project risk because it increases the project risk because the project could go several different ways.
Yeah,
and anytime
that's it.
It's you're unsure, that increases the risk.
Yeah, because of a different paths, more confusion. More confusion means uncertainty, more risk. Risk. Now, so that's the answer. I think that's the book answer also. So it requires more people. It doesn't more people to do with schedule. Now, more people, if you, let's say, wanted to fast track the project, you're going to do in parallel. But if you crash the project, you have to put more people. So when you crash the project, you put more people. And when you fast track the project, you do things in parallel. So remember those things, ways to speed up the schedule. Here, you're going to create most confusion if you have more than one critical path. You can have more than one critical path. So if you find that as one of the answers, that is true. You can have, but it's going to bring about more confusion, more risks. So B is the answer. Very good, very good. Number 13. How we are?
Okay, the team is working on a project to develop or procure a customized software package that will be used by delivery drivers for a new chain of pizza restaurants. There are multiple stakeholders in this project. Because of the ongoing projects to design, build, and equip brick-and-mortar restaurant locations, you are informed that there is no rush to complete the software development work. If project time and costs are not important as the number of resources used each month, which of the following is the best thing to do? Perform a Monte Carlo analysis, fast track the project, perform resource optimization, analyze the life cycle cost. So they're looking to, we have plenty of time, and cost is not a big motivator.
So you said plenty of time. That means which one you can reject here?
Oh, fast track for sure. We don't need to do that.
Yep.
Analyze the life cycle cost. That's got nothing to do with timing. Perform Monte Carlo analysis. What is that, a sandwich?
for duration. Monte Carlo analysis is to determine the duration. So
Okay.
you can throw that out also.
Yeah, so it's
What's
gotta
left?
it's gotta be performed resource optimization.
Yeah, absolutely. When you have plenty of time, then all you got to do now is look at the resources, see how you can optimize them. When you don't have time, then you start to fast track or crash the project.
Right.
All right, good. Moving on to number 14, Letras.
The organization is committed to rolling out a new smartphone accessory at an industry trade show in 6 months. The sponsor has made it clear that this product, to be created by your project team, must meet a long list of requirements, adhere to high quality standards, and most importantly, be ready in time for the trade show. The sponsor has promised to commit as many resources as necessary for you to complete the project within these constraints. Your project management plan results in a project schedule that is too long. If the project network diagram cannot change, but you have extra personnel resources, what is the best thing to do? Fast track the project, level the resources, crash the project, perform Monte Carlo analysis. You just said what that meant, but did I read the same question?
14. You're on 14. You read 14.
Oh.
Мне надо иногда отвечать.
Okay.
Мне видео нет.
Your project management plan results in a project schedule that is too long. If the project network diagram cannot change, but you have extra personnel resources, what is the best thing to do? So I'm going to say level the resources because it mentions that I have plenty of personnel. And leveling the resources means kind of making sure that all of my personnel resources are like nobody's working harder than the other, and that all of the tasks
so
are
Letras, if you can look in the third sentence of the problem where it says must meet a long list of requirements, adhere to high quality standards, and most importantly, be ready in time for the trade show. Be ready in time. So we
want to fast track it.
We have to fast track somehow. Now, we have two ways to do it. One is to crash the project. Other ways to fast track it. Right? These are two ways. Which one? And we also know, if you look at the last sentence, it says your project management plan results in a project schedule that is too long if the project network diagram cannot change, but you have extra personnel. So you need to fasten the timeline. You have extra people. Given that you have extra people, would you fast track or would you crash the project?
I don't know that I really know the difference between the two.
Okay, so who knows the difference between fast tracking and crashing?
Fast track is to make people hustle and work faster, and crash the project is just to terminate the project, as I understand it, literally.
No, Javier, go ahead.
Yeah, so fast track is parallelizing, meaning several teams working at the same time instead of one after the other as originally planned. But it's already telling you that the plan cannot change. The schedule is set as is. So the only solution is to crash the project. To crash the project is to throw resources at it. It's not to cancel it.
Oh.
It's to throw all the resources in there. So it's C.
So Azim, by definition, fast track means you're going to speed up the process by doing things in parallel.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
Okay.
Things in parallel. Crash the project means you're going to put something into the project and then the project is going to crash. And what you're going to put in, you can put more resources. So think of it as like you're putting more people into something, and that whole thing collapses. So
it's a bad name.
Yeah, I don't like it, but that's how I remember it. Crashing. How can you crash something? Well, they're throwing something into it, and what is that? People. you're throwing people into it. So that's what that is. You'll be learning what the definition of fast tracking and crashing, and that is something that's going to be asked in PMP, a number of questions about fast tracking and crashing. So make sure you understand the definition of both of them. All right, number 15.
Yes, it's my turn.
All right.
A project manager is in the middle of executing a large construction project when he discovers the time needed to complete the project is longer than the time available. What is the best thing to do? Again, this is another crash question. Cut the product scope. That's one thing you could do. Meet them with management and tell them the required date cannot be met. That's also true. Work overtime. Determine options for schedule compression and present management with recommended options. The best thing to do, I guess would be D.
Yeah. The word compression, schedule compression is the key. Crashing and fast tracking are options for schedule compression. So they kind of put it in a different way, but they were alluding to those two methods.
So we call that a work shifting left or shifting it right. If it's shifting left, we're compressing. And shifting right is we're losing. We're delayed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's continue. We have a few more minutes, so we can do a couple more. So let's page down this and do some more here. And the ones we so for folks who have this particular book, number 10th, can do these problems, and the ones who have the new book should do the online problems. So don't forget to do online problems. Online problems, you have about 10 or 12 problems each from each chapter. Make sure you do them when you get home over this weekend. And for those who don't have the 11th but have the 10th one, should do it from the book. And if you need this PowerPoint, send me a text. I'll send you this PowerPoint if you send me a text. All right, so let's do 16 is too long. Let's do something that's short and sweet. Let's do 17. Seems like it's a shorter question. So who wants to do 17? Olivia.
Okay. Although the customer agreed to the original project schedule, they are now asking for an earlier project finish. They are being pressured by their own customers. The project manager sponsor thinks finishing early is not only a viable option, but also a good idea for your organization because it will enable you to start another project sooner. In attempting to complete the project faster, the project manager looks at the cost associated with crashing each activity. The best approach to crashing would also include looking at the what? Risk, impact of crashing each activity, customer opinion, no, sponsor opinion, project life cycle. Okay, I think it's the makes sense one that there is impact of crashing each activity. You have to know what it's gonna impact on the project when you crash it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be A.
So two things to know about those two options. So in fast tracking, when you do things in parallel, you increase the risk. When you do things in parallel, you increase the risk. Keep that in mind. When you crash by adding more people, you increase the cost. Okay? In crashing, you increase the cost. In fast tracking, you increase the risk. So A is the answer, correct answer, because of that reason. And it makes sense, right? When you do things in parallel, you can bump into each other. You can create friction and stuff. So that's the reason for the risk piece. All right, so let's see. We can do one more. We got a few more minutes. 9 o'clock. We'll let you go. So let's do number 19 first. Who wants to do 19? Easy one. Azim.
Okay.
Try it.
During project planning, you estimate the time needed for each activity and then total the estimates to create the project estimate. You commit to completing the project by this date. What is wrong with this scenario?
Okay, let's read it again. During project planning, you estimate the time needed for each activity,
and then you do the
and then
total
total the
estimation.
estimates to create the project estimate. Okay, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You added.
You
Okay,
commit to
what
completing
you
the project by this date. What is wrong with this scenario?
So what are the answers?
The team did not create the estimate. The estimating takes too long to using that method. The team did not create the estimate, and a network diagram was not used. The estimate is too long.
Okay, B is out. Network diagram has nothing to do with estimating. So B is totally out.
Okay.
When it says network diagram is equal to schedule, right? We said network diagram is equal to schedule, so B is out. C, what is C?
The estimate is too long and should be created by management. The project estimate.
That is that right?
I don't think so. It kind of doesn't make sense.
So management doesn't create the estimate, right?
Yeah.
So C is totally out.
So
what's D?
The project estimate should be the same as the customer's required completion date.
So A and B, the answer is between A and D, right? A and D. So which one is it A and D or what was the? Let's make sure. The team did not create this estimate. The network diagram was not used.
So I think the answer is A. What it's asking here is what's wrong with the scenario. So you estimate the time. You meaning the PM, right?
The PM.
Right. The PM doesn't estimate times. He adds it up, but he doesn't estimate it.
Yep.
So the team has to estimate the time. So that's part A. The first part is absolutely correct. The second part is, I think it's just designed to trick you. An estimate takes too long using that method. No, it takes whatever long it takes. A team needs to do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's A.
A seems like a very logical, and the way I think you said it makes a lot of sense. The team did not create the estimate. Team's supposed to do it, and estimating takes too long using that method. What method are we talking about here? By you method, by the PM method? Well, so A sounds very reasonable. B, the team did not create the estimate, and network diagram was not used. When estimate, do you need the network diagram? I would say A is a very is a good answer, and the one that we rejected was C and D. So C and D are bad answers. A is a good answer. B, I'm not sure whether the network diagram should be used, but I don't think. You need to break down the WBS. You decompose into tasks. Once you get the task, then you start to. You start to sequence it, and then you start to, when you sequence it, it becomes all connected, and when it's all connected, it's a network diagram, right? When it's all connected. So maybe B is the answer.
So B is the answer. Yeah, now that I read it again, so both have the same first sentence, right? The team did not create the estimate, and the other one sounds worse than the B, right?
Yeah, A, B are good answers. I think B is better answer.
Right.
B is a better answer than A. All right, this is good. We're learning also from the problem, and that's what I do. I learn a lot from just doing the problems. It tells me what I don't know, really, and then you go back and you figure it out. So let's do another one. Let's go to next page here. Let's do something from here. Okay. Let's just do this one here. This one, number 21. Who wants to do 21? Who do we have left besides the three of you? I think we had Takira. I know I didn't push her for anything today. I know she's not in the mood today. But if you are willing, Takira, you can take a stab at this. We'll help you. All right. No answer. You want to go with 21?
You are a project manager on a US $5 million software development project. While working with your project team to develop a network diagram, your data architect suggests that Quality could be improved if the data model is approved by senior management before moving on to other design elements. They support this suggestion with an article from a leading software development journal. Which of the following best describes this type of input? Mandatory external dependency, discretionary external dependency, external regulatory dependency, heuristic. I don't remember what heuristic means.
Heuristic means a rule, a general rule. General rule. So general rule doesn't apply here because we're not talking about rules here, are we? We're talking about actual designs here. So D, you can throw D out and look at the 3.
I will also throw out A because it says mandatory external dependency, and they're making a suggestion.
So A is out.
Making a suggestion, then it's not mandatory.
Yeah, A is out, A is out. You left with B and C. Which one it is?
So if it's B and C, discretionary or external,
is it a regulatory dependency?
Is it regulatory? Quality could be improved. Quality could be improved if data model is approved. Is it regulatory? Or discretionary. Regulatory or discretionary. I mean, it's kind of at your discretion, right?
Yeah, there's no must-have, right? Regulatory is something that you sort of like mandatory. If it's regulatory, if it's somebody, if there's a regulation behind it, then it sort of falls into the mandatory bucket.
Right, but right, and so I would go with discretionary because it's at your discretion on whether you use. They're suggesting it. They're giving you an article to support why they think that is best, but it's still at your discretion.
Yeah.
Whereas with regulatory, that means there's some laws or something that makes it mandatory.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So boom.
Yep.
B.
You're absolutely right. Makes sense to everybody. So we're going to stop here. And what I want to do next time when we come back, we are going to do this 22. I want you to try this questions like these. Just do one of them, and we'll do one when we come back on Monday, and then we'll go on this new topic. So we'll do one of these on Monday. I want you all to try on your own to be able to. Given this, if you can draw it out, if you can draw the network diagram, given this table and activity and preceding activity and duration, can you draw a network diagram? So try to do it on your own, and on Monday we'll do it together and conclude on the scheduling chapter before we start talking about communication and leadership and stuff. All right, everyone. Do continue to review the book, look at the definitions, look at those quick tests, which is in front of every chapter, in the beginning of every chapter. Look at that, see what you know, what you don't know, and what you don't know, underline it. Underline stuff you don't know, and then go back and read up on those things, see if you can understand. If you still don't understand it, then send it to me. We'll bring it up as a topic in the class. So go through all the quick tests from each of the chapters and see which one you know, which one you completely don't know, and then read up on that. So at least you begin to learn. All right, everyone. Appreciate you all coming to the class, and we'll be seeing you on Monday.
Thank you, Professor.
Bye.
I really like
Thank
today's
you.
format.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye-bye.